This is a big for anybody out there, Mayor Carmen Yulín Cruz told MSNBC's Rachel Maddow on Tuesday night, a plea for this help, which is right here, to get moving. Cruz said many rescuers on the ground were waiting for orders of where and how to respond. While the federal government has been scaling up its response by dispatching Navy and Coast Guard vessels to the island, along with up to 3,000 troops and aircraft carrying food, water and other supplies, help is not arriving fast enough. On Tuesday, President Donald Trump gave himself high marks for his administration's storm response, but the reality is that moving the island from crisis mode to a decade-long rebuilding phase is far more complicated than anything Trump has dealt with so far, including Hurricanes Harvey and Irma, which were also Category 4 storms at landfall in the U.S. The optics of this storm don't favor Trump. First, there's the fact that he never mentioned Puerto Rico's plight during the weekend, choosing instead to ignite a battle, via Twitter of course, with NFL players over their protests of police brutality and other issues. Then his comments during the Tuesday press conference in the Rose Garden may turn out to be his "you're doing a heck of a job, Brownie" moment. On a day when cable networks were broadcasting images of flooded streets, aerial shots of devastated homes, and desperate pleas for assistance from Puerto Rican officials, Trump insisted that he was receiving nothing but praise for his administration's storm response. And Hiracello further went on, he said, and through the Trump administration's leadership, the relationship between FEMA and my team is very, very strong. It wasn't until Wednesday, 6 days after the storm struck, that he even tried to empathize with storm victims. Empathy, after all, isn't something that this president excels at. I mean, that place was just destroyed, Trump said. That is a really tough situation. I feel so badly for the people. As with Puerto Rico, there was a racial component to Katrina as well, with majority black neighborhoods hardest hit by the flooding. Trump, who spent the weekend disparaging black members of the NFL and NBA, is seen by many as not caring about Puerto Ricans because he sees them as some sort of other, while Bush was tarnished with the reputation of, in Kanye West's blunt words, not caring about black people. There's a lot of strain being placed on the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, which is in charge of responding to disasters such as Hurricane Maria. At the same time, FEMA has personnel in Texas and Florida who are still working to respond to requests for aid from the first ever back-to-back Category 4 storms to hit the U.S. in a single hurricane season. Hurricane Harvey alone, which made landfall in Texas on August 25, may become the single most expensive storm on record in the U.S., while Hurricane Irma is also expected to cost well into the tens of billions, as well. I don't believe there has been anything even remotely close to this over the last few decades that FEMA's existed, said Jeff Schlegelmilch, the deputy director of Columbia University's National Center for Disaster Preparedness. The fact that Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory, rather than a full-fledged state, may explain part of the hesitation in Washington's response to the crisis. President Trump, for example, did not mention the storm damage at all despite his prolific tweeting over the weekend. When he finally did address the situation, it was in a series of tweets Monday night that paid more attention to Puerto Rico's debt than the ongoing suffering of its people. The 3.4 million residents of Puerto Rico are U.S. citizens, but they lack a congressional delegation that can vote in either chamber. That limits the island's ability to marshal support for an aid package. They have the added disadvantage where they don't have representation in the U.S. Congress, Schlegelmilch said. There's no electoral incentive to put this on the agenda, he said. Nowhere is this lack of incentive more evident than in President Trump's refusal to lift the Jones Act, a 1920 law that is limiting the ability of foreign registered shippers to bring in aid to Puerto Rico. And on Wednesday, Trump said he's hesitating on the Jones Act waiver, which has been done after previous storms, because of pressure from the shipping industry. Well, we're thinking about that, but we have a lot of shippers and a lot of people that work in the shipping industry that don't want the Jones Act lifted, and we have a lot of ships out there right now, Trump said. As of Tuesday afternoon, the Energy Department said the majority of the million electricity customers in Puerto Rico were without power, with efforts underway to restore electricity access for critical facilities, such as hospitals. Initial assessments show significant damage to transmission and distribution systems, the report stated. Trump was not wrong in saying that Puerto Rico is facing a debt crisis, considering the island owes about $70 billion to creditors. Over the years, the island tried to make up for a loss in revenue by borrowing and making deals with U.S. hedge funds, which turned out to be a terrible idea. One of the hardest hit entities on the island, the Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority, or PTEPA, also owes about $9 billion, which helped degrade its system before the storm hit. The debt crisis, degraded infrastructure, and poverty found in Puerto Rico made it more vulnerable to a disaster like Hurricane Maria. In some ways, the storm may be an opportunity to rebuild the island in a more resilient way, so it will better withstand the next major hurricane that comes along. But this can only be accomplished if the Trump administration decides to invest in such an endeavor, like it is in Texas and Florida. We don't know if that's the case, since Trump has yet to ask Congress for a disaster funding package. It only took a few days for him to take that step with the other two storms. That's not a good sign.